Hey, it's Dr. Fred with Cleveland 13. Creatine, it isn't just for bodybuilders. Creatine used to be associated with people looking to get bigger biceps or increase their bench press. You'd walk into a supplement store and see a huge tub of powder and assume it was for some young 20 something. However, recently, something very interesting has happened. Creatine has gone mainstream. Women are taking it, older adults are taking it. It's showing up in conversations about healthy aging and longevity. Researchers are primarily focused on studying it for the brain and cognitive capacity. And I'm seeing a lot of people who wouldn't even have considered this previously now asking the same question. Should I be taking creatine? And that's what I'm going to answer here today. Now, creatine is one of those rare supplements where there really is a lot of substantial evidence to support it. However, some of the claims you're probably seeing online and in these headlines are really getting ahead of that research. So, let's separate what we actually know from the hype. First of all, disclosure, I take creatine. I've taken it for years. I think it's fantastic. What is creatine? Well, it's not a steroid. It's not a hormone. It's not a stimulant. Your body actually makes creatine naturally. And you could also consume some from your diet, particularly if you eat meat, seafood, and if you're a carnivore. Most of the creatine in your body is stored in skeletal muscle, and its basic job is actually pretty simple. Your muscles use something called ATP for immediate energy. If you are sprinting, or jumping, or doing a hard set in the gym, you burn through that available ATP very quickly. Now, creatine, stored in the body as phosphocreatine, helps to regenerate that ATP. So, when you add creatine to your diet, you're essentially increasing the amount of this energy reserve available for your muscles. And that is why we've known for decades that creatine can improve performance during long bouts or repeated bouts of high-intensity exercise. However, here is where things get a little more interesting. Your muscles aren't the only part of your body with high energy demands. Your brain also has enormous energy demands, but we'll come back to that. Next, does creatine actually build muscle? Well, let's start with what we know best. Creatine does work. When you combine creatine with resistance training, evidence shows that it can help improve your strength, your power, your performance with exercise, and it can also increase lean muscle mass. However, I want to make an important distinction here. Creatine does not magically build muscle. You can't just take 5 grams of creatine, sit on the couch, and have bigger muscles. It doesn't work that way. Resistance training provides the stimulus. Creatine can amplify that response. And that's an important distinction because supplements are often marketed as though they're doing the work for you. They're not. You still have to train, and honestly, this becomes even more important when we start talking about aging. Okay, now because in aging, you experience sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. Now, this honestly may matter more at the age of 65 than when you're in your 20s. When you're in your 20s, having a little more muscle may be mostly because you want to look good or you're trying to improve your athletic ability. But when you're 65, 75, 85, muscle becomes something very different. It literally becomes part of your ability to maintain independence. Can you get out of a chair? Can you climb stairs? Can you carry your groceries? What I see a lot is folks who lose their balance. Can you catch yourself if you fall off balance? Can you get up and down from the floor, right? As we get older, we naturally lose muscle mass, strength, and power. And resistance training is one of the most important tools we have to fight that decline. This is the one reason why I think that conversation is changing around creatine and why it's so important. Research suggests that combining creatine with strength training may provide additional benefits for older adults in terms of strength and lean muscle mass. So, the stereotype needs to be changed. The person who might benefit from creatine isn't always the 20-year-old bodybuilder. It might be his 65-year-old mother. And speaking of females, what about women and their desire to use creatine? There's a long-held, outdated idea that creatine is primarily a men's product, but it's not. Women use the same creatine phosphocreatine energy system that men do. And researchers have become increasingly interested in creatine supplementation in women, including during and after menopause. It's really an understudied field. This is important because menopause and subsequent aging can bring about changes in muscle mass, strength, body composition, and bone health. In fact, researchers published a systematic review and a meta-analysis just this year, 2026, examining creatine monohydrate in postmenopausal women. So it's not just like gym bro science anymore, but there's something women and men should know before taking it. The number on the scale may go up a little bit. So the next question is, well, does creatine make you gain weight? Yeah, it can. But that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're gaining fat. Creatine stored in muscle is associated with an increase in water mass, right? You retain water. So, especially when someone first begins supplementing creatine, or if they do a loading phase, which I'm not a fan of, they're going to see the scale go up. And that might make you panic. I gained 2 pounds. Well, creatine's not making you fat, right? Fat gain requires an energy surplus over time, right? So consistent surplus over time equals fat gain. Water weight and fat are completely different things. So if you start creatine and that scale begins to creep up a little bit, don't worry, it's normal. And don't abandon it yet, right? Because that'll happen initially, then that'll begin to subside. All right, next, what about the brain? Let's get to what I think is really the most interesting areas of recent creatine research, the brain. Your brain is very metabolically expensive, right? It requires a tremendous amount of energy to function, and that phosphocreatine system that I had mentioned participates in brain energy metabolism as well. So, researchers started asking, if you take creatine and the availability in your body goes up, could it potentially affect cognitive function? And the answer is maybe, but it's looking good. There have been many randomized trials, right, RCTs, and systematic reviews examining creatine with things like memory, attention, and processing speed, and the results are quite promising. There may be particular circumstances where the effects are really, really relevant. For example, older adults, or in times of, metabolic stress. However, this is also where social media and headlines can take a bad turn, right? They go outside of their lane. Creatine doesn't prevent dementia, or, creatine doesn't make you smarter. This is all claims that a lot of influencers put out there, right? And you got to be your best own researcher and do your diligence. But in light of that, I can say scientifically, the cognitive research is very promising, but less established than what we know for muscle and lean mass performance and so forth. So I'm interested. I think it's worth following for cognitive capacity, but I'm not ready to call creatine a miracle product for your brain. A lot of folks will ask, well, what about the side effects? Can creatine damage your kidneys? It's a common concern that I hear, but creatine is not bad inherently for your kidneys. For healthy adults, using recommended doses, the evidence doesn't show any damage to people with healthy kidneys. But there's some confusion, and here's why. If you've ever had blood work done, which hopefully you have, you've seen a marker called creatinine. Now, creatinine is commonly used to help estimate kidney function. You'll see like GFR, glomerular filtration rate. Well, creatine supplementation can sometimes influence the serum creatinine in your body. So you may have a change in that lab marker, but it doesn't always mean you've had your kidneys damaged. There's an important distinction there, right? Which is also why you should let your doctor know what you're taking. If those levels are elevated and you're on creatine, let them know. Right, but notice I keep saying healthy adults, right? If you already have kidney disease or another medical condition that, supplements may affect that, it wouldn't be like a blanket recommendation. So talk to your healthcare provider. If you have healthy kidney function, green light, kidney issues, I'd say yellow light, red light, talk to your doctor first. Another concept here is how much should you take? Okay, now for the practical part. If you're a healthy adult and you want to take creatine, which I recommend it, keep it simple, right? Creatine monohydrate. That's it. You don't need some exotic proprietary blend and these things that you see, creatine hydrochloride. It's all a scam, right? And I say this a lot. Save your money, right? You don't need to spend $60 on a creatine product because someone claims that it absorbs better in your bloodstream. It's a scam. Creatine monohydrate's super cheap, extensively studied, and effective. And for most people, 3 to 5 grams per day. And some folks can, may want to do a loading phase, and it might say that on the label. I don't believe in that. They're trying to just get you to consume it more quickly. Right? Traditionally, they would say, well, take 20 grams per day for the first 5 to 7 days, and that saturate your muscles more quickly. True, but here's the secret. It's unnecessary. If you simply take 3 to 5 grams daily, you'll gradually get there without the negative GI effects, right? And so I think simplicity wins for the average person, including myself. All right, when do you take it? In the morning, before your workout, after your workout? Should you take it with carbohydrates? You hear a lot of this stuff, right? And to be honest, people love making supplements complicated. I think because it makes them feel like they can stand out and they'll get some clicks. For the average person, the most important thing is just take it consistently, right? Whenever you're going to remember doing it, morning, afternoon, evening, I actually put it in my lemon water every day and I drink it during my workout, right? Whenever you prefer taking it, I wouldn't lose sleep about the exact minute you consume it or whatever. However, it does help to enhance absorption and bioavailability if you mix it with some sort of a simple carbohydrate, like, a little bit of fruit juice or something. So, all right, let's answer the question that I've been, waiting to answer. Should everyone take creatine? Not necessarily. I don't think that it's a scientifically defensible statement to say everyone should take it. Because you don't need it to be healthy. If you eat well and exercise and you get good sleep, maintain a healthy body weight, the benefits from creatine would be incremental, right? However, I'm a fan and I advocate it for most people because I think that its benefits are really prevalent. If you train, if you work out, the evidence to support creatine use is very strong. If you are getting older and trying to preserve muscle mass and function, I think the evidence is also pretty strong. If you are a vegetarian or a vegan and you don't have a lot of meat or seafood in your diet, well, then your baseline creatine scores may also be lower. And so, in light of all of these things, I think for the average person, it's worth consideration. Anyway, that's my little soapbox spiel for today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And again, I'm always here to help.